Hello everyone and welcome to a brilliant game from the Esports Cup 2025, the winners bracket final. Magnus Carlsen versus, we could say, his nemesis Jan-Krzysztof Duda, as Duda is the person who took away Magnus Carlsen's 125 games unbeaten streak in 2020. If you guys remember, it was in 2018 when Magnus lost the game to Shahryar Mamedyarov, and then he went on a 125 games unbeaten streak over the course of more than 2 years. And it took Jan-Krzysztof Duda, I think it was with the black pieces in the Altibox Norway chess in Stavanger. It was a round 5 game, and Duda defeated Magnus, and it was a very sad moment, I believe, for Magnus. It was October 10th, 2020, I imagine, a day Magnus remembers very well, or maybe not. Maybe he, just doesn't care. But yeah, Duda obviously a very, very strong player, as Magnus was, 125 games at that level, that is, okay, Capablanca did have a 7-year unbeaten streak, but he didn't play as often. It was, those were different times. In modern times, that was an incredible streak. Dingliren, I think, also had a very, very similar 110 games, but yeah. Duda was the one who took it away, and I imagine it's very, very pleasant for Magnus to always face Duda, and now he faces him in the finals of a very, very strong event. So let's check out the game. There's quite a lot to enjoy here. It's a crazy game, and you guys will love I'm probably going to make it 2 pause the video moments. I could change my mind during the video. We'll see how it goes. So Magnus with white opens with pawn to d4. We have knight to f6 by Jan-Krzysztof. Pawn to c4 and e6. We have pawn to g3. Magnus opts for the Catalan, and pawn to d5. A very standard reply to the Catalan. And I would say Magnus Carlsen is, well, you could say he's the best player of any opening, but specifically the Catalan, I would say Magnus Carlsen is just, his Catalan is unrivaled. Maybe with this particular time format, as it's 10+0, Daniil Dubov being, as tricky as he is, his Catalan is also, absolutely spectacular. So it would be also great to see him play it at this time format. But okay, bishop to g2. We have d captures on c4 and queen to a4 check. Again, all standard stuff here. This is the so-called open defense. We have knight bd7, knight to f3, and pawn to a6. We have knight to c3 and pawn to c5. Nothing new, all been played before. We have bishop to f4 and knight to d5. Attacking the bishop and the knight here. Knight captures, e captures, and castles queenside. And there is a game that reached this position. It was in last year's Tata Steel Challengers between Marc-André Maurizi and Mustafa Yilmaz, where bishop to e7 was played. And bishop to e7 is already considered a mistake by the engine, even though that game ended in a draw. Here, Jan-Krzysztof Duda plays pawn to b5, which is the top move recommended by the engine. And it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game, and fireworks are about to begin. We have queen back to c2 and bishop to b7. So it's a pretty crazy position where Magnus really has a king on c1 in front of all of these pawns and the position about to open up, but Duda still has to move the bishop and castle kingside in order to reach safety. And Magnus already thinks that bishop to b7, okay, that's maybe a bit too soon. It is required. The Catalan bishop could be an issue, but Magnus just goes pawn to e4. And it seems like a move that you cannot play because it's undefended. But if you play d captures on e4, this is impossible to play with black. To give you an example, knight g5. Okay, what do you play here? I will only play the top engine moves for black, just to see, just to show you how hopeless it is. Pawn to f5. Okay, seems like everything is nicely defended. You go rook ht1. Nicely align the rook with the king. And now your dream is to just castle. Although you can't really just play bishop to e7, as knight to e6 already, that's resigns. So you have to play something, knight f6. But all of a sudden, pawn to d5. Now, again, it's not really defended. Black can capture it, but then you open up the d file. If you don't capture it, knight to e6, and you can just resign. So maybe just capture it. Knight captures on d5. This is not the top move recommended by the engine, but just to show you how the position opens up extremely quickly, you can start giving up material. Bishop captures on e4, f captures, queen captures on e4, and now if bishop to e7, again knight e6 gets the job done. You're attacking the queen, you're attacking g7, and if queen d7, hoping that you capture on g7, then even knight captures on c5. Bishop is attacked, queen is attacked, the knight here is attacked twice, the bishop on e7 is attacked. So if the queen ever loses control of e7, you can just capture on d5 and then checkmate on e7. So this is dead loss for black. Just to give you an example of what kind of a difficult position it is to handle. So Duda plays bishop to e7. It is by far the best way to play. E captures on d5 and castles king side. He says, nope, I'm out of here, not interested in that. Magnus goes rook h to e1 and bishop to f6. Now again, you could go for something like bishop captures on d5, but then queen f5 attacks the bishop, and once you take care of that, let's say knight to f6, d captures on c5, and you will have problems here. That bishop is looking very, very odd. I mean, you don't have to capture on c5, but then the pawn will be defended, and Magnus will have a beautiful passed pawn. And if you capture it, then something like bishop e5, and you have too many problems here. There's just not much you can do. You can just capture and then capture on d5, as you're going to remove the defender of the bishop on d5. So yeah, not much you can do here. So after rook h to e1, bishop to f6, and bishop to d6 by Magnus, putting pressure on the rook and saying, now if you try rook to e8, well, then I'm just going to trade and play captures on c5, and I'm going to have two connected passed pawns, which is resigned territory. So after bishop to d6, c captures on d4. Again, Duda playing unique moves, only moves that don't lose him the game. Knight captures on d4, and now we have bishop captures on d4. Slightly better would have been rook to e8 or queen to b6 first, preparing bishop captures on d4, but okay, he captures right away. Magnus recaptures. Queen to f6, attacking the rook, but now Magnus moves with tempo. Rook h4 gets the rook to safety and threatens checkmate. And not a lot of good ways for you to stop this. G6 is a little bit better, but I mean, you're gonna have to give up the exchange and then just hope for the best. So Duda plays pawn to h6. He doesn't want to weaken his position too much, and he's hoping for bishop captures on f8, which is a move that Magnus played. But later in an interview, he said that he's ashamed of not even considering the other move that was discussed. So have at it. Solve the position so you also will not be ashamed if someone asks you about this move. Yes, the move is bishop to e7. And now, if queen to g6, you can just trade, mess up black's pawn structure even further, and then win the exchange, and then just enjoy a very easy game with having a passed pawn and, being up the exchange. But if you go queen to b6, then it's even worse. Then you don't capture the rook, you actually go queen f5. Look at this. You attack the knight, and not a lot of good moves. You either give up the knight, or you defend the knight, and then rook captures on h6. And that's all there is to it. You can't capture, you can't not capture, otherwise bishop captures in queen h7 checkmate, or if you capture, then just a simple bishop captures on f6, followed by queen g4 check, queen g7 checkmate, and that is it. So big congratulations if you found this one. Magnus missed it. He just captured the rook, as it is enough for him. Or so you'd think. Rook captures on f8 by Jan-Krzysztof Duda, rook to f4, attacking the queen, queen to d6, and rook to d4. Okay, he's having an exchange. He has a passed pawn on d5. Obviously, this is enough for Magnus, but yeah, Duda is one tricky player. Knight to c5. We have bishop to f1. Magnus wants to move the bishop also to help out against knight d3, but now also you'll be able to advance the passed d pawn without having to trade bishops. And you could trade, but then if you trade, okay, you can just go rook d1, and that's going to be a problem. So rook to d8, and now queen to d2. We have queen to b6, and now Magnus plays queen to e3. d6 also definitely a move to consider here. Magnus goes queen to e3 instead, and now bishop captures on d5, which is not only an inaccuracy, but also a way for Magnus to win the game, but only if you find the correct idea. So have at it, while I give you a couple of seconds. Bishop to g2. Looks like a weird move as it's undefended, and also, it's the Catalan. You never even think about giving up your Catalan bishop, but that is what you need to do in order to win this game. It is what Magnus did, and there's just not a good move here. Duda captured on g2. We have rook captures on d8, queen captures, and now just queen captures on c5. Forcing this game with queen and rook versus a queen and bishop, and not a lot Duda can do here. He plays bishop h3, bishop f3 a little bit better, but I mean, he has to play fast. Again, it's Magnus with 0 increment, so he will always be faster than anyone else. Magnus goes queen e7. He wants to go into an endgame, and Duda, of course, declines. He goes after the a2 pawn, and Magnus just has to play rook to d1. It's a very, very, very standard idea. You want to go for that rook to e8 check, rook to d8 check, and then, completely bust open the black king side. But he goes rook to e3. He wants to trick Duda. If Duda captures on a2, then he will play rook a3, and obviously win the black queen. However, Duda, not falling for that, plays bishop to e6, and now Magnus is he's out of a move. I mean, he really would like to play the rook to the d file, but now it's no longer possible. So he has to try something else. Now rook a3 would, of course, blunder terribly. Queen e1 check, and after king to c2, bishop f5 check, and there are no more squares for that white king. So after bishop to e6, we have queen to d6. Magnus says, all right, I'm just going to find a different way. And pawn to c3. Duda starts pushing pawns, and he wants to open up a path, to Magnus's king. Rook captures on c3, only good move, and now pawn to b4. And okay, you cannot go rook to c8. That's covered by the bishop. So rook to c5 would have been even better. Rook to c6, and now Duda even goes pawn to b3. We have rook captures on a6, queen to e1 with check. We have queen to d1 blocking, and now queen captures on f2. And it no longer looks like Magnus is all that safe. We have a captures on b3, and now queen to e3 with check. King b1 and bishop captures on b3. All of a sudden, it is Duda who is attacking Magnus. Queen to f1 and queen to e4 with check. Now, if Magnus goes king to c1, queen c2 is checkmate, so Magnus has to go to a1. And now it's still fine, but Magnus is better on time. He has a full minute more. And Duda could play queen d5, queen b7, g6, make a little more breathing room for his king. But he played, amongst the few moves that lose him the game. He played queen to c2, and it is such a bad move for a very, very sad reason, obviously, for him. What do you think Magnus played here? Have at it. For the last time, I wasn't going to make this the pause the video moment, but since we're already here, how do you win this? Of course, rook to a8 check, king h7, and now queen to b1. This is the worst diagonal to put the black queen on, as now Magnus just has a very, very elementary endgame that Duda knows that there's no way that he can draw. So queen captures on b1. It's a forced queen trade. King captures on b1 and pawn to f5. King to c1. We have king to g6. We have king to d2, king to g5, and now rook to b8. Imagine the surprise. Who wins the game? Well, of course, the passed b pawn. We have bishop to d5. The bishop is forced to move. Now pawn to b4. All that's left is to advance the b pawn to victory. We have king f6, pawn to b5, king to e5, and pawn to b6, and he was in this position on move 47 that Jan-Krzysztof Duda resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Really, there's nothing more. Whatever Duda plays, let's say g5, Magnus pushes the pawn, and now it's really a matter of a check and then advancing the pawn to victory. Or even if you hide the king, then you just pin the bishop and you advance the pawn next. So, I mean, that's all there is to it. So, very nicely played. Magnus got a winning position. Then he missed that bishop to e7 move, which you guys, of course, found, as you guys are amazing players. Then he found a winning position again with bishop to g2. Then again, but you see how Duda always finds chances. He always finds tricky moves. He sacrificed the c pawn, the b pawn, the a pawn. He opened up the position, and then he played that. I mean, move that allowed Magnus's queen b1, and there you have it. Magnus wins the winner's bracket of the finals of the Esports Cup 2025, and now it's only a question, who will he face in the grand final? We'll see after we check out some of the other pairs as well. And like I always say, use that hashtag suggestion. I always look for your suggestions, and that definitely helps a lot. And also, before I forget, I have not one but two huge announcements coming, maybe in some 2-3 days. So stay tuned for that as well. They're really huge. So, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Ricardo Cardona Lopez, James White, Robert Poundech, Christian Medical and Professional Services, Peter Albert for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And what do you think? Will more games be decided? Do you agree with Magnus? Do you love this 10+0 format? I know I do, but people have different opinions and stuff. See you soon.